Yeah, you're not you're
All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know how I get down right to the point, and I always tell you, like I tell you before we start every episode, whatever the challenge is, whatever the obstacle is, whatever it is you may be feeling like you're going through that's getting in the way of whatever goal you may have, we are here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. Today, I have someone that is absolutely going to take this mic and rip it. I mean, actually turn it on fire when it comes to the self-development, when it comes to the work he's done, when it comes to taking just a negative, taking something that's negative that happened to him and turning it into an absolute positive. Jim Jacobs, founder of Focus Insight. Welcome to the show. How are you?
It is great to be here as one. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And that's right, man. We got to turn every negative into a positive. We don't really have an option, do we? So I appreciate being here, and I appreciate you. Thank you, my friend.
Yes, and you are someone who, again, and for you listeners, you guys know this about me, and I would encourage you to be the same way. Whenever you hear something that's really positive, or you hear positive-minded people, or you're in a situation where you have the opportunity to take something from a positive-minded person, take advantage of it. So I was listening to you earlier this morning while I was working out, and you had re-quoted somebody else that you heard about. It's you're not always going to make the right decision, but you could always make the decision right. And I quoted that on my regular video. And that's where I want to get things started off, man, because like you, I have a sports background and I'm always looking for ways to merge the sports world and what you learn on the athletic field, whether it's the ice rink, whatever it is when you're playing sports. I'm always looking to merge those lessons with business owners. And you were able to do that through like kind of by chance. I know you played hockey, but then you were coaching like by accident, and ultimately you were able to build the business based on what you learned through hockey. So can you just kind of speak a little bit about your background in hockey and all that stuff, and then we'll kind of
For,
go from
for For sure. And, hockey to me changed my life. It saved my life. And, actually a friend of mine who I learned a lot of great lessons from is Jeremy Roenick, who just got inducted in the Hall of Fame 2 weeks ago. So,
there.
shout out to JR. Congrats to him. But,
Yes.
and that's the neat thing as one, as you probably know, when you hang out and you play with super competitive athletes, you learn a different gear, you learn a different work ethic.
Yes.
Grabbing chicken fingers after a practice is not acceptable, right? Even the little things like that you
Right.
don't think of, the little details that you don't think of.
Right.
You might had a great practice and you don't think about the diet, you don't think about the sleep, you don't think so so much of sports translates over to business. I mean, you wrote a book on it. I don't have to tell you,
Yes.
but you mentioned that, right? You don't always have to make the right decision. You make a decision, you make it right. And
Right.
that's
Man,
from
that was a powerful one, man. That thing hit me. Yeah, who was it? Andy? What you said
Andy
that?
Andrews and the Traveler's Gift.
Yeah, that one. I was working on this one. I'm like, wow, that one hit me. That one hit me a great deal because, again, I've been in this, made a ton of mistakes as did you. But when you are actually have the mindset of a person that, hey, I made the decision and we got to figure something out, it changes the way you actually go about your business. So, to get into a little bit more details about Focus Insight and what you're all about, the kind of the tagline to the organization is qualitative research. And we all know there's a difference between quantitative and qualitative. So when you kind of brought that term, and as I was listening to you to prepare for this, that term qualitative research was something that really hit home. And when you were able to, talk about your sports background and then what you actually lived through, the whole qualitative thing is something I want to give you an opportunity to explain a little bit more about, and then we'll get into like your story about how you started the company, and go from there.
Sure. I mean, qualitative research is really people it's the quality of the interviews, in-depth interviews, right? When you want to get something done, if you're looking at a Tesla, right? When they're building a Tesla, they got in-depth interviews with people to see what they wanted in a sports car. It was great, it was electric, but you know what? They didn't want an electric car that was gonna be like a golf cart, right? They wanted a high performance, so those are where qualitative interviews come up, and it doesn't have to be about cars. It can be about anything.
Right.
And it's such a huge part of of business every day. And that's what we do. We find people for major companies to give them their opinions on products, services, and whatnot. So I think more important than kind of what we do is our mission. And our mission is improving lives daily. And we do that by, we help people make additional money to be in a study, on a night or weekend. We help companies figure out what their consumers really want,
Yeah.
So, um, we've worked with, supermarket chains and how they,
Mhm.
how customers, what customers really want. Like, for example, no supermarkets ever had a salad bar or food court. Now they kind of all have them, and that's changing consumer behavior, consumer patterns, and I've seen people, hey, where are we going to dinner? We're going to the supermarket to go to the food court, So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so we want to improve lives daily. That's the mission of our company, and that's what we do. We do qualitative research. We do it nationwide, and we do it better than anyone else.
So it's also really important to mention how you got started because you were, if I'm not mistaken, you correct me if I'm wrong, you were doing, I think it was commercial real estate, and then there was a situation where you were trying to get money from someone, but then you had broke your arm, and you realized that you were able to make some side money better off by doing this, and ultimately that turned into the business for you. So can you speak a little bit about that, or if I got anything wrong,
I,
because that yeah, that was crazy to know that again you're going after something, but then you realize, wait a minute, there's more money on this end. Let's just focus on that.
That's 100% correct, and that is wild. You always read about the pivot,
Yeah.
and that's right, man. You don't have to make the right decision, but you make a decision, you make it right. And
Yeah.
I was involved as one in a lot of commercial real estate deals, and I thought this was the pinnacle. I thought I wanted to be the next huge property owner. Um, and that was my goal. I saw my big goal as owning all these strip centers and commercial office buildings. And I was brokering deals in the interim. And I had a client who stiffed me on a pretty huge commission check. And I had calculated everything over a 5-year period. And it was well into the six figures of commissions that I earned, but did not get.
Sure,
And it was,
sure.
and you haven't lived until you've had all the groceries um on the conveyor belt at a Giant, and you or a supermarket, and you give them your credit card, and your credit card bounces,
Yeah.
right? Horrible
I've,
feeling. You're like,
I've been there, man. That's a horrible. And what the thing is too, and not to cut you off, but it's important when you're working hard and that happens. It's not like you're somebody that's not working, but when you're actually putting in the work and you're trying, you're just not. Again, there could be a situation where somebody just stiffs you or you don't have the money, and then you have to be in that moment where you give your card and it's declined. It's like it is incredibly demoralizing.
as one, you are right. It is like you're hustling, you're working night till day, and I put together this big deal, and I'm settling on Wednesday for it,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden I come to the place where settlement's supposed to happen on Wednesday, and I find out it's settled on Monday without me. Okay, so I'm like, and I was cut out of the deal. So even though I had it in writing, and then I'm chasing them after, so literally the next night after that conveyor belt of groceries, right? And that leaves you as broken a man as you could possibly be, where you can't afford groceries, right? Or your credit card bounces for groceries.
Mhm.
So I went to coach a hockey practice, the little guys. My son was playing at the time, and a kid flies up from behind me. My ankles fly in the air. I land on my elbow, and my elbow is broken. So right, they have to. I have to get surgery and have to screw. So now I need health care. Right, I couldn't even afford groceries 2 days before. Now they're drilling. Within a week, I'm getting surgery, and they're drilling a bolt into my elbow, which is still there.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, I was laid up. I couldn't drive. I was on Vicodin and just painkillers and hanging out. And a friend of mine had a market research business and said, "Hey, we have a study on Facebook. Would you like to be in it?" I said, "What do I do?" "You log your habits on Facebook for a week, and
Mhm.
I'll get like $300. I said, "Wow, I can do that. That's easy." and then I kind of started figuring out the business. And I mean, I don't know about you as one, but I'm the kind of guy like when I go in a restaurant, I'm like, okay, and I used to work in a restaurant as a waiter, but side hustle, main hustle in college. But
Mhm.
you start looking around and you're like, okay, well, each table must make this, and right, I start calculating numbers in my head. So I started figuring out, well, if I can get this many people in market research, we could do this, we could do that. And to make a long story very short, it turned out to be a better business than
Mhm.
my real estate business because I had returning clients who, right, when you buy a building or you transact a property, even if you own a lot of properties, it's usually only maybe a couple transactions a year. This was just repeat month after month.
Right.
It wasn't subscription revenue, but they would often come back,
Mhm.
and I loved it. And we scaled that from me to we had 40 people. We went Inc. 5,000. And this is all funded by myself.
Right.
So, we didn't get any outside funding. So, I can tell you, man, it wasn't easy. There's a lot of sleepless nights. There's a lot of swinging the bat. But like Mark Cuban says, right? If you go 3 for 10, you're in the Baseball Hall of Fame. If you go
Wow.
1 for 100, you're in the business hall of fame, right? So all you gotta do is get 1 out of 100, right? So I figured, well, if this business doesn't work, I just have another 99 to go, and at some point want to be successful. So that's
Right.
always been my mindset.
And also, the point I want to make sure we don't get brushed over is how low you actually were. All right. On one end, listen, I can't afford my groceries, but I'm going to go try to coach my son's hockey team, which I'm sure the mindset going into that, as someone who coaches and teaches kids all day, going into that was probably something you did not feel like doing at all that day. But then ultimately, now you break your arm, and then you really got a problem. And the going into where you were, I'm a firm believer in the saying, it's darkest before the dawn. It's darkest before something good is going to happen, no matter how dark it actually gets. And eventually your instincts take over because what was there, listeners, it was a group of people, a circle of friends that thought of him during this for a Facebook group, and that's what was able to pull him up. Something that's very small. He just said it, babe, some side muscle, some side money, $300 or whatever it is, something really small that turned into his answer going forward to get out of these dark times. And too often do we not pay attention to these little things, or we take these little things for granted when we don't realize how important they actually are. And you had already beat me to it. I was going to ask you about this, but when it came to like kind of setting the stone or taking a next step to your company, when you mentioned, whether it was the Teslas or the Googles or be labeled on ink and all that, what was it? You have a really interesting story in terms of who you brought in as a team member, who you brought in, the people that you were willing to work with at this point. Can you speak on a little bit about what your process was in terms of who you brought in and who you were going to bring in to help scale the business?
Yeah. So, I didn't know how to hire employees and whatnot and,
You're
and hire
commercial, like you were
people.
used
But
to doing your own thing at that point.
yeah, right. So, I mean, I did have a commercial real estate brokerage, but that was a little different of a business. I was kind of every person was an independent contractor, and it was kind of you ate what you killed, and there wasn't really much supervision. This I like better because you know I was fully trained because I played competitive hockey for a long, long time.
Mhm.
So you didn't have to love all your teammates, but you had to respect them and you had to get along with them.
Yes,
And
I'm glad you made that point. It is important. All right, because listen, the difference I've seen from sports to actual quote unquote real world is there's a level of disrespect that others have with coworkers and they don't say anything. They don't solve it. But like in sports, if you don't like someone, you handle that situation in the locker room or on the field or whatever. But at the end of the day, the respect is going to be there because of what y'all are going through, whether you like them or not. But the problem in the quote unquote working world is a lot of folks don't respect who they work with every day.
And you know what? One of the things I hate, and I even like saying the word hate, but I hate when they say we're a family at work. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Because Netflix has a great you can Google it. It's called the Netflix Culture Deck. And Netflix says we're not a little league baseball team. We are like a professional sports team, and we're looking for the best position player at every position on our team. And
Right.
I was like, wow, you know what I mean? Like we want to compete, and we want to compete for the Super Bowl every year, right? And I use all these analogies, right? We compete for Super Bowl every year. We have a salary cap, so we got to make sure we fit within the salary cap, um business and the NFL team are so very similar, right? And you got to figure out the best people you can get in the most pivotal positions and stay within budgets. I
Hmm.
just think that's a great, great way to look at it because, I've had teammates who I have loved and still love off the ice. I love getting together with them. I love, tell jokes, we'll grab lunch.
Right.
But you know what? They weren't very dedicated to good hockey players. So you know what? When I was on the ice, I wanted to play with someone, but you want to play with the best guys you can. Thursday night, and
Exactly.
Thursday night, I lived one of my dreams. I love pro hockey, but I ended up playing online with Eric Lindros. Yeah, and I watched Eric Lindros play. I ended up scoring a goal. He passed it to me. We're joking around after, but like when you play with someone who is world class, like one of the best
Right.
in the world, and you're like, wow, you know what I mean? He was, you know, a little bigger, you know what I mean? Had a little belly on him compared to when he was
It
in
happens.
his
Yeah, it happens.
prime, but
Well, I live in Florida. There's a lot
great,
of
great.
Irish pro players that they got a little they start working out, but this the mindset is still there.
Oh, the mindset's still there because it's all fun and laughs, a little charity. Then once the game starts getting a little tight, like these guys lock in,
The mindset
even
kicks.
though they've been retired for 20 years. So it's yeah, it's something else. So as one great, great, yeah, great analogies for sure.
So when it comes to the business, though, can you walk us through a little bit about the day-to-day? Because I would imagine the term qualitative research is new to a lot of people. How do you go about serving your clients, and what's the thing that you actually do for them, and all that good stuff?
For example, we have one right now where they need teenagers for a year-long panel, ages between 14 to 23,
Hmm.
New York, Dallas, and Chicago, I believe. And it's people who use social media. Well, that's easy, right? Because and what's it about? They test different algorithms with them. They ask them what they like, what they don't like. I mean, you look at something like TikTok, that's taken the world by storm. We've done a ton of studies with TikTok and Instagram
Right.
and Facebook, and it's really neat because I mean, maybe 10 years ago, well, maybe I'll go 20. I don't know how long social media's been around for. Maybe it has been 10. It probably is 10 now, but at one point there was no social media, so it was trial and error.
Hmm.
What do you want to see? What don't you want to see? How many things worked, how many things didn't work. Um, so yeah, so at any rate, so qualitative research is really getting good insights, in-depth opinions. Like if you take a survey, that's great, but it really doesn't it gives you the numbers, but companies want in-depth opinions, insights into what the problem is in a boardroom, in front of a board of directors, in front of a CEO, where they can make recommendations to see what's going on. I mean, we work with the NBA, with eBay, with Pinterest. I mean, with some major, major companies. So it's a fascinating business for sure.
Well, this is an important point to remember because this is not something that you learn in the school system, guys. This is not a job that you go on Indeed and look for. This is actual people that are actually really they want to do something great. They want to do something significant. And I've been to a ton, I've been to a lot of different schools. I'll probably talk to you for hours and hours about all the experiences I've had in the education system. But what constantly gets missed is the concept of professional development, professional and personal development, and how young people can go about feeling a part of feeling like they're significant in some lane. All right. And when you're talking about finding kids that maybe are really into TikTok and them finding a place, or, some new project, some new CEO has an idea, whether it's eBay, whether it's the NBA just wanting to get research, how do you go about, being able to explain this to people so you can work with more folks? How do you go about getting the word out to folks to say, hey, Focus Insight exists and there's actual jobs for people who need this particular thing, and you can actually build your career around doing this type of stuff.
For sure. I mean, people who've been in our studies love them. I mean, we target a lot of, either corporate clients or market research companies, and they're the ones who hire us and pay us in order to get people for these studies. And then we find a lot of people via social media or our website at focusinsite.com. You simply join a panel. So it's Focus, FOCUS INSITE. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. All you got to do is like, join the community, sign up for one of our studies. We have a link. We'll ask you 10 to 20 questions. And then if, should you qualify, we'll pick you, we'll call you, we'll get you. That's our whole business. We get you set up and we'll get you scheduled for, it's usually a Zoom interview just like this. So, whereas one, we want to ask you about, for example, we've done some pretty cool work with Netflix
Yeah.
where they would want people who are fans of an author of a certain book. And the whole study is okay. Should we make this book a miniseries? Would you watch it? What would you want to see? What actors could you see in this role? What actors could you see playing this part? So
Uh,
it's really kind of neat. And then it comes back and they're like, oh wow, it's a good idea. So
And you would
um
never know that though. You would never know that. Like, you
right.
would never know that there's actual people that are actually doing on the ground level, doing that kind of research to grow companies, to grow businesses. I mean, I use the example all the time of Steve Jobs, where there was an already MP3 player that existed, and he said, "Hey, there's an iPod. We're going to tell people they want the iPod. All right, like get this everything, but we're going to tell folks we want the iPod, and you see what he's been able to do. So, you
Yep,
know,
1,000 songs in your pocket. Yeah,
exactly.
unreal.
All that being said, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just tell, I mean, you sort of already touched on this. Can you tell people a little bit about what the overall vision is, what's next? Like if you had a 10 to fit, maybe 10, 15-year plan on what you want the company to be, kind of speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, our mission's improve lives daily. So, we want to be the number one place to go to. We're looking at potential partnerships and acquisitions right now. What we want to do is, a lot of people do not know about focus groups, market research groups. It's kind of, I mean, I, I know people like, I never heard of this, and
Right.
we want to change that. We want to make this very, very transparent. We want to be the leader. So that's what we're working on now. We want to be the leader in consumer and B2B studies. And, and really, you have opinions on a different product or this or that. We're actually working right now on an AI model, on a special software AI model where
Yeah,
we'll be able to identify
I'm a writer and I
people.
literally started using Chat GPT for like little things. I'm not gonna ever have them write my articles, but it's something I've been using. It takes a lot of time from trying to write everything. So I might have to jump in
Well,
to that.
let me tell you what I do. I have my own. I have the premium Chat GPT.
Uh-huh.
I have my own blog GPT. I uploaded it with all these blog articles that I wrote.
Oh,
I said, please analyze my writing style. And I like to be motivational, similar to like a Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk, or whatnot. And I will, next time when I write a blog, I'll write a paragraph and I go expand on this and I'll send it. And it's not 100% perfect,
right.
but it's probably 95, 98. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like the way they did that. I like the way, and then I'll add a couple lines and that's my blog. So it cuts my blog writing time down in about by,
Man, you see, this is
80%.
why I did. Yeah, you just taught me
So,
something, man. That's what yeah, that's I was for years I was stubborn about it. Like one of my colleagues at the school, he was telling me about Chat GPT. I'm like, man, no, I'm a writer. You see what I do? I write books. I'm writing my own stuff. And now look at me because if you use it and you prompt it the right way, it's gonna improve your style. So I gotta try that myself. So that's a good idea.
yeah, it's 20 bucks a month. You make your own GPT, you can load up all your PDFs, analyze my writing style.
Oh,
I'll get you offline, but it will save you a lot of time, but it's still your authentic voice. You know what I
exactly.
mean?
That's the important thing.
So,
And
yeah.
before I let you go, can you just tell people a little bit how they can get in touch with you if they want to hear more and all that stuff? I know you mentioned it early, but we'll make sure on the record saying it.
Absolutely. So my email is the best way to get me. Jim at focusinsite.com. FOCUSINSITE.com. I have my assistant who is checking it all the time. So if would love for you to reach out. Anything I can help you with, let me know. Otherwise, go to our website, www.focusinsight.com. That's INSITE.com. And we will join our panel. And yeah, tell me, I love to hear a note from one of your listeners telling them you heard our podcast, and whatever we can do to help, we'd love to help you.
Yes, and I'll include all that in the show notes as well. So, Jim, the final thing I do to close out all the shows, so I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You just broke your arm, you're on your way to the hospital, you don't know how you're going to pay for it, you're all over the place. Just pretend that that version of Jim has come into the Zoom room, give him some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Oh man, give them some, some. You know what? You mentioned something earlier. It's darkest before it's dawn. I don't know about you. I've sat there. I'm like, well, how dark does it get? You know what I mean? Like it's like pitch black. Does it get much darker? You
Yeah.
know?
Yes, I've lived that. I know exactly what you're talking about on that one. It's like, come on, like, geez, can it get
So
darker?
so what I did, and I thought this was voodoo, hocus pocus, you know, but you gotta live. So I have this journal. Every day I write three things I'm grateful for. And some days, as hard as it is, it might be, hey, I am breathing today. Some days, hey, you know what? I have all my limbs, I just came back from a physical therapy appointment, and my physical therapist was amazing. Okay. I met her last week. She two cochlear implants, deaf, physical therapist, and number one in for deaf people in the CrossFit Games. Number one in the world. Okay, I was like, wow. So I have both my hearing. What am I complaining about, right? So,
Oh
you know,
man.
we, so I would tell my younger self, just man, keep swinging, keep hustling, and it's if you hustle and work 16 hours a day or whatever it is, and learn from all mistakes and just keep iterating, keep going, keep moving, keep talking, and put yourself in uncomfortable positions, because now what I realize 20 years later, 20 some years later, I do things and people goes, oh, I wish I could do the things you do. I wish I knew that. I go, well, you didn't have the 20 years of heartache and struggle to get to this point. So, um, you know,
John Maxwell says it like, he hears a lot of people telling him they want to do what he does, but it's like, do you really want to do what I did? Do you really want to
right.
do what I did? And I think you nailed it. And the reason I close out with that question, if you're new around here, it's because if you're going through that, if that is your current situation, the promise of this show is to make sure you know you're not going through it alone. So, all that being said, again, Jim, looking forward to keeping up with your journey, man. You taught me a whole lot just in listening to you and then having you on the show. So I'm looking forward to following up with you and staying in touch and all that good stuff. So, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.